you have your standard Sharpie, which is like this, right? And that works okay, but what you might want to consider is getting the Sharpies that specifically can handle oil and water. And these are the type right here where when you buy them, the packaging will say these can withstand being wet or having oil. So for example, as you're dipping your knife, so you can cool it down as you're grinding it, and perhaps even while you're drilling, there's oil and water. These Sharpies will last and be able to help mark through them a little bit better. So keep that in mind that there are these two types of Sharpies. But another common kind of mistake, and it just kind of is a challenge, is when you're doing it, when you're marking perhaps to make a Kydex sheet, and you use maybe perhaps a marker to dot where you got to drill, where you want to grind off, how you want to shape it. If you use a Sharpie or even a pen, even just a standard ballpoint pen, the ink, it tends to really stick, and like a gel pen, and it'll get stuck in there, and it'll be really hard. You'll have to like sandblast it. You can try using soap, you can try using WD-40, and even then it'll just take forever to get out, and it'll kind of ruin this finish on the outside of the Kydex. So a quick, easy way to remedy that problem is, you see here, that comes off very easily. That's because I'm using little kids' washable markers. And I find that when you're marking anything that isn't metal, specifically when you're working on sheets, if you mark it with a washable marker, it'll make life much easier when it comes time. If you didn't drill a hole there, or if you didn't shape it that far, you can just wash it off very easily, and it'll get the job done. Sometimes when you're grinding, I don't know what it is, but behind these belts, in between the belt and this plate right here, this plate, it starts to build up some kind of residue where it's semi-solid, almost like a gummy substance. You have to scrape it off. And what happens is, say like you have your knife and you're perhaps just trying to clean it up with like a finer grit belt, just to get that side more smooth, maybe remove some scratches before you go and do the next step, like bead blast or something. And while you're doing that, you don't notice, but because of when you were doing all this and shaping it, that right there where these two things meet, some gunk formed, and it just gets behind there. And so you have to make sure to always keep that area clean. Basically, just always check every once in a while, especially when you change your belts. Go ahead and make sure that this area, look for signs of like just buildup of that. It's like a black residue. Scrape it off. Usually, you have to use some kind of metal, something kind of you actually can scrape with, and clean it up occasionally. Just kind of check, especially before you go and do something perhaps more important, such as like when you're smoothing out one side. Because if not, what will happen is where that gunk built up, when you go across, it'll create like a groove, like an indent, right where that gunk has built up, and it'll just kind of ruin your day. A little simple thing to fix, but generally speaking, easy enough to watch out for. So everybody loves stone washing. For some reason, people just love that kind of distressed look, kind of polished. You can see here, Harbor Freight, I think it was like $40, Central Machinery vibratory tumbler, and it's a 5-pound. And this works, but when a knife starts to get bigger than, I would say, you start to get something like in the 6-inch range or 7-inch range, it'll jam in there, and it won't move around and rotate. And eventually, what will happen is if you leave it unattended, it will just damage. Rocks will eat away at one specific spot. It's challenging. Shapes like karambits in here definitely don't do so well. Anything just that might get stuck. And so my tip here is that when it comes to these tumblers, there are even other options where you can buy them where they're this way, and rather than vibrating, they spin like this constantly. But those, even when you put a knife inside, each time it spins, it's like the knife, it rides up like a washing machine, like a dryer, and then when it comes down, it drops down. And what's happening is you keep dropping on the tip and the bottom, and it keeps dulling two spots, specifically more than everything else. So in the end, and those can cost like $400 from like websites such as Grainger, Granger, and to be honest, I still like this in the end, these little silly vibrating ones. But the main thing is, regardless if you use the rotating or the vibrating, you have to make sure to keep a close eye on it. I would say like in intervals, just go and check. I mean, half an hour can do a lot of damage real fast. Even if like you've done it 8 times, that 9th time, I've had that happen like 2 out of 10 times, you know, it's just something weird happens. So, and it's just a shame that if after all this time you're done with your knife and you finally put it in there and you're just ready to give it its finish, that happens to your knife, and you know, you end up one spot dull, the tip is gone, you have to redo a bevel. It's a nightmare. Try this. But yeah, a normal hand soap, soft soap, those brands, you can see the effectiveness of it. And laundry detergent, as you can see here, with the abrasiveness, will really remove it easily. Getting into knife making, it can be very expensive. You know, you're trying, kind of a lot of trial and error on what tools will work, what materials and stuff like that. And I just don't want you to just waste money. You know, especially if money's tight. You know, times are hard. You know, you got family to feed. As you're drilling, you know, and these things start to get dull. Sometimes also just the machining, the precision is not spot on, and you could get 2 drill bits that are just slightly different. Meaning, for example, you know, you might buy the same. For example, this is a right here. This is a 5/16. Okay, and sometimes you'll be drilling the hole, and you'll take a brand new one, and the hole will not be like a nice circle, or it'll start to travel or move to the side, and just sometimes they're just not perfectly precise. These aren't like, you know, they're mass produced. And so what I tend to do, and I learned this, is that I take a Sharpie, one of those water resistant, oil resistant Sharpies, and I mark my drill bits. And so you can see red for me means it's still new, clean. Black means it's pretty much done for. It's just good for, I don't know, something like aggressive, just going through whatever, not G10, like Kydex or something precise. I wouldn't use a black marked drill bit. And then last, we also have these grinding stones. And some people ask, like, how do you make bevels on more intricate spaces? I just buy these Vermont American, they're $10 grinding stones, and you kind of have to keep track of those too. Sometimes they can start to give out, and actually you can go to Harbor Freight and buy this multiple pack with these pink stones, and these actually do a really good job also. I bought multiple packs of that just because I was like, man, I don't want to shop around for this. So you can see here, Chicago Electric rotary grinding stone bits.